I'm going to get started, I think. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. I'm Rebekah Robertson. I'm going to be talking to you tonight about my book about a girl and how to support gender diverse young people. Firstly, I'd like to, on behalf of Moreland City Libraries, acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people as the traditional custodians of the lands and waterways in the area now known as Moreland. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, as well as to all First Nations communities who contribute to the life of the area. And I'd also like to acknowledge the people on whose lands I'm coming to you tonight from, which are the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. So I'm in the Glen Ira City Council area. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. I'd also like to acknowledge our LGBTIQ+ elders who might be tuning in, and to also acknowledge the successful passing of a bill last night in the Victorian Legislative Council prohibiting conversion practices in Victoria. This is an important change that will save lives, and I want to thank survivors for their courage and determination in pursuit of justice and equality. We stand on the shoulders of giants. So thank you to the Moreland City Libraries for inviting me to speak today. Today's talk has been titled Supporting Gender Diverse Young People. I'm not an educator or a counsellor, so I'm not going to give you a step-by-step guide on how to, but I'm going to talk to you about my own experiences, what's led me to do what I've done and what I've learned from that. I'd also like to give you a little warning that some of the statistics that I might reference could be distressing to hear. So I'm the very proud parent of Georgie Stone and her twin brother, Harry. I'm an actor and voice artist. That's how I earn my bread. And I've been a massage therapist and a dental nurse and a cleaner, and now a writer and an advocate and founder of Transcend Australia. So let me take you back to before my kids were born. As an expectant mother of twins, my pregnancy was considered high risk. So as a result, my main ambitions for my children were that they would be born alive. It was no more than a wonderful, curious notion what combinations of names we may end up choosing for our twins. I was not stuck on the sex of my kids. I was going to be happy with whoever fate delivered to me. And fate delivered to me Georgie, who was born a baby human being, and her twin Harry, who was also born a baby human being. And from that moment, I knew it was my job to love them well, to try my hardest to not stuff it up. As childhood progressed, Georgie's insistence that she was female and the myriad ways she demonstrated that to us, including telling us outright, only highlighted our impotence as parents, mainly because we simply didn't know how to help. And she became more and more distressed and increasingly sad, angry and full of shame. Our fear paralysed us and it failed her. The thought that frightened us most, because firstly our knowledge was based on stereotypes and assumptions, and what we read only reinforced them and therefore our fears, was a life of hardship and suffering for her. But I knew in my heart that she was transgender and that this experience was very real. She was 7 years old in 2007 when her distress caused her to say that she wished that she was dead. I knew I needed to put my fears aside and find her the help that she deserved. And I also knew I needed to step up and be her champion and I remember how alone we all felt. So she's an adult now, she's almost 21, and we've been through some really rocky, heartbreaking, and astoundingly wonderful times together. After the kids finished Year 12 in 2018, I began reflecting on our experiences. It's a huge journey from fear and isolation to embracing, celebrating, and then being in a position to advocate, just not for my daughter, but for kids yet to be born. So I wrote a book called About a Girl, which catalogues those experiences. Oh, I've got my book here. It's my book. And About a Girl catalogues those experiences from birth to university and hinted at a new opportunity for Georgie to be the first trans actor in a trans role on Neighbours. There's no doubt that Georgie has achieved great things. She's overcome so much, and I know that she's ambitious, bold, talented, and smart. She's created opportunities for herself where none existed. But she also understands that as a trans woman, she's always going to have to do this. The process of writing About a Girl was excruciating because it forced me to revisit and confront some very uncomfortable moments when the only way forward was to carve out a new pathway for ourselves and for those not far behind us. 3 family court cases, including an appeal, trying to access appropriate medical treatment for her. The agony of sending her to school, knowing she could be bullied again that day. The family conflict. The persistent and vicious trolling almost every time Georgie is in the media, which is transphobic and sexist. How powerless she was made to feel at times in her own skin, in her own life. How advocacy and her profile is at once a privilege and a curse. It can be exultant when a major advance in rights is achieved, and crushing to see people, long admired, highly regarded, with huge public profiles, spout the most disgusting anti-trans propaganda. People with power, a platform, and the privilege of having their voices amplified, with one tweet, can cast a shadow over an already marginalised community. Spread misinformation, disinformation, wrong thinking, and fueling fear and hatred, and the results kill. It's heartbreaking to see the damage done, with no leadership from those who could be champions, but it's convenient for them to ignore the pain of children. Georgie's been dealing with the effects of discrimination her entire life, but she's not exposed to the worst the world offers trans and gender diverse folk. TGDB people on the margins are on the margins of all marginalised communities, and trans kids seem to be the low-hanging fruit, just too easy to pick up and be thrown, a cheap shot in somebody else's turf war. For trans kids, for trans kids and their families, it's exhausting. The challenges thrown at us are personal and political, and they're across every aspect of our lives: family, education, faith, the law, society, medical, mental health support, sport, and human rights. There's not a part of our lives untouched by struggle. For many, the daily grind leads to burnout, and Georgie and I have both experienced that, along with the trauma of some of our experiences. So Georgie making the decision to be visible and then evolving into a public figure adds another dimension to that weight of expectation and responsibility. And as I've said, that is a place of privilege, but it comes at a cost. One of the things that I'm most proud of is the peer support network I founded in 2012, Transcend Australia. At the time, it was the first and only parent-led peer support network for the parents and carers of trans kids in Australia. And in 2020, we were able to take the giant step in the organisation's journey by becoming a fully fledged charity, supporting hundreds of Australian families and their gender diverse kids across the country. Transcend started with one connection, one call. Early on in our story, I gave my mobile number to Georgie's doctor and asked him to pass it on to any other families he was seeing who wanted to make a connection. The first mum I spoke to was Jane. We had children the same age, with the same gender identity, and we clung to one another like life rafts. She's still my safe harbour when the going gets tough. We learned very early on that nobody got it like other parents. Secondly, there was so much oversight and intervention in our lives, medical, legal, educational, political, social, so many people telling us what to do or what we were doing was wrong or trying to direct our parenting in one way or another. So many people we had to share the most intimate parts of our lives with, and so many drama vampires who were just wanting to hear the juicy news about our child. That we really needed a space of our own, that we could communicate with other families, meet with them, have the kids meet one another and talk to others who spoke our own language. The learning curve of this experience was so steep. The stress was incredible that having this safe, quiet place to share our experiences with boots on the ground knowledge was vital to our ability to support our kids better. And it also gave us a place to vent about some of the awful experiences that are sadly still common today, or to celebrate when a goal was achieved or a kid made it through a tough time. It truly felt as though we huddled together, seeking solace in one another's understanding, whilst judgment rained down from all quarters. In 2007, when I first sought help for Georgie, there was not a single gender service for kids in this country. There was not a single school program in this country that included trans kids. Not a single government policy that included trans kids. No representation in the media that was positive for trans kids. No books for or about trans kids. There was nothing for trans kids. It was an entirely different landscape then, like being dropped on a far distant planet and without a map and told to find your own way home. At that time, supporting my 7-year-old was seen as so extraordinary that accusations of encouraging, enabling, abusing my child by some closest to me and some in our school community left me feeling very isolated, scared and alone, and deeply hurt. But it also made me really, really angry. There was one devastating incident for Georgie at primary school swimming lessons, which I describe in my book, that awoke a sleeping giant in me. Before that, I was a parent trying to avoid conflict, reticent, timid, conciliatory. And this incident became pivotal in my growth as a parent advocate and connected me to a very deep and grounded part of myself. I have to say that my Scottish heritage plays some part in my personal mythology. Bear with. My clan, Robertson, is one of the oldest clans in Scotland, and there's something of the stout, solid, plain-speaking, hardy Highlander in me. Our clan motto is fierce when roused, and that was certainly true for me. The sleeping giant that had awoken in me was as Scottish as they come. She was rock solid, could smell BS from a mile away, and definitely had a firm grasp of colourful language. Those who know me can lay testament to that. As I met and interacted with more and more families, I saw this in them also. developing their advocacy skills based not on formal training or workshops, but through bitter experience. We all had our giants awakened in some way or another, and our protective instincts kicked in. And it wasn't just an animal reaction to a threat, it was organised and strategic. It was often mothers searching and researching and seeking out the best, most reliable information, creating social and communication networks, creating safety for their kids at school, acting like landmine detectors, sweeping the landscape ahead of our kids for possible danger, supporting whole families in their education, guiding reticent family members through their own difficult emotions, and eventually sharing our stories in the media. It was relentless but important work. This is just what must be done. When discrimination and fear are preventing your child from realising the full scope of their humanity, you grow bigger. Transcend Australia came about because families needed a place to retreat to when the world became too harsh. And after creating our community and gaining strength and confidence, we marched ahead together, fierce when roused. And here is why supportive parents and carers, and indeed supportive communities, are so important. In 2016, the Telethon Kids Institute surveyed the mental health of trans kids. The report, called Trans Pathways, offered the most startling insight yet into the experiences of trans, gender diverse and non-binary Australians aged between 14 and 25 years. The results were truly confronting. Almost 80% had self-harmed. Almost 75% had been diagnosed with depression. 72% had been diagnosed with anxiety. 23% had been diagnosed with an eating disorder. Almost 79% had experienced issues with school, university or TAFE. 25% had been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Almost 90% had experienced peer rejection. 74% had experienced bullying. 69% had experienced discrimination. 22% had experienced accommodation issues or homelessness. 66% had experienced a lack of family support. And almost half had attempted suicide. This is the reality of trans and gender diverse young people in this country today. And we must ask ourselves why we've left them to suffer for so long. Because in no possible scenario are these numbers acceptable. The impacts of those very harmful outcomes can continue in a myriad of ways for their entire lives. And can I just say, it's not their identity which causes these issues. It's the direct result of rejection, discrimination, marginalisation, and stigma. It's the hatred and fear directed towards them every single day. Just 2 days ago, Writing Themselves in For was launched, a national report into the health and well-being of LGBTQA+ young people in Australia. Again, whilst it shows some progress, it also reveals how entrenched those shocking figures are. From the perspective of a parent, the statistics around the lack of family support really stick in my gut. Almost 66% of trans kids experience a lack of family support. That to me is a serious abrogation of our responsibility as parents. To leave a child without love, withholding of emotional support and nourishment is simply unacceptable. There's no excuse for it. It's our sacred duty when we bring a child into this world to nurture them, to hold them dear, protect them, help them become strong and capable. We don't get to pick and choose the challenges our kids are going to face throughout their lives. But we do have to be prepared to rise to the occasion when those challenges demand our engagement. I'm often told, Georgie is so lucky to have you. Lucky. Why? If I look at it one way with that statement, it's a recognition that the world is a dangerous place for difference, and that difference is punishable. Perhaps a sad but understandable reasoning. So Georgie's luck, if you will, is that I didn't punish her for being who she is, that I didn't force her to suppress her very essence, that I didn't reject her or boot her out of the home. Why is Georgie lucky? Why is my support not simply viewed as expected, normal, appropriate parenting? Is that the low bar that we set ourselves? That kids who have a difference are lucky to be nurtured and protected. That's such a deficit position to take. And it's not just the world, it's the world in our heads. Nobody has ever once said to me, "You're lucky to have Georgie." Not one single time. She and her brother have been a gift to me. I love who I've become because of them. I've had the most extraordinary honour of supporting them so they can blossom and bring all of themselves into a world that needs people who are kind and good and who can be of service to others. I know things now I never knew before. I know people now I never knew before, and I know about myself in ways I never knew before. Evolution and adaptation is wonderful. It's painful and inspiring and wonderful. It's resoundingly true that Georgie being trans has never been the issue. Fear has been, and the hostile world she's had to navigate. And I've tried to help my kids overcome every obstacle that they've faced. I recognise my own privileges that have allowed me to do that. Not everyone has those advantages. And it's interesting to note that the majority of visible parent advocates in Australia and around the world for trans kids are white, straight, cisgender women. And that demonstrates, I think, the responsibility we have to amplify other voices, especially those of young people from diverse backgrounds and intersections. But I've tried to use whatever privilege I have to remove obstacles for others. And when I haven't been able to, I've left warning signs for those that follow. I want all of our kids to flourish and thrive. The world needs them. We know that when our kids are loved, supported, and have access to timely medical and social support, their health and well-being is the same as their peers in the general population. We know that better informed parents are better advocates for their kids. We know kids thrive at school when they're not bullied and shamed. We know that kids who are safe can achieve anything. And we know that respect, dignity and autonomy is as important for children as it is for adults, because they're human beings. And we know that trans rights are human rights. To dismantle the systems that oppress is the responsibility of the most privileged, but somehow we've decided that it's up to the ones who are oppressed to account for themselves, to make a compelling case for themselves, to justify why we should care enough to take some of their heavy load and carry it further down the road towards justice and equality. And if you please, to do it in a way that doesn't make us feel uncomfortable or too out of our depth or too overwhelmed by guilt. Black Lives Matter demonstrated how poorly equipped many of us are to hear the truth about how we benefit from oppression. It's uncomfortable, but we must listen. It can be very empowering for trans, gender diverse and non-binary young people to share their experiences publicly and to live their lives with a degree of visibility and agency previous generations have not been able to. But it comes with a mighty backlash at times, because so many systems actively discriminate against them. And we expect trans kids and young people to lobby politicians for their rights. We expect them to advocate for themselves in school and put a stop to their own bullying. We leave it to them to convince a court that they know their own minds. Their very existence has been politicised, which for defenceless, powerless children is death by 1,000 cuts. But there they are in the middle of the fray saying, but I'm just me. I'm just me. We need to share our resources, our skills, our time, our money, our strength, our allyship, and carry the load for young LGBTIQ+ people like Georgie. Sure, heroes and role models are nice, they're needed, they're important, but they're human, and it's so exhausting for them to keep going because there is no let up. So what's needed here is a collective effort, goodwill, and the heart to hear and care and uplift and celebrate and educate and advocate for the common good, for the love of diversity, for the respect of another soul on this planet who, just like you, is trying to live their one precious life. So what has this last year taught us? We can adapt quickly. We can care about one another's well-being. We can sacrifice a little of our own privilege and comfort for the greater good. Science is good. Who would have thunk it? Character helps you do hard things. Community helps us get through tough times. Politics means very little when the choices are stark. Hope and love are not just pretty words. They can sustain and transform if coupled with purposeful action. But words don't cut it otherwise, no matter how pretty they are. So remember that Transcend was created from that one phone call, that one connection, and a shared hope for a better future. And 8 years later, here we are, having changed laws, supported hundreds of families, and been a major part of changing hearts and minds through storytelling in Australia, which has introduced an emerging generation of trans, gender diverse and non-binary Australians who are ambitious for themselves and the community that has sustained them, who want to make a meaningful and impactful contributions to their country and to the world. Young people need our help though. They can't do it on their own. You can make your workplace safe for diversity. You can make your libraries safe for diversity, make your home safe for diversity, make your schools safe for diversity, make your place of worship safe for diversity, make your sporting club safe for diversity, make our laws safe for diversity, make our entertainment safe for diversity, make our gatherings safe for diversity, make our universities and TAFEs safe for diversity, make our medical system safe for diversity, make our facilities and the design of public spaces safe for diversity, and make our corporations and governments safe for diversity. If not me, who? If not now, when? Listen, learn, consult, plan, take action, and repeat. It's never too late for inclusion. There's never a bad time to begin or continue. There is only now and now and now. Thank you very much for your time. I hope the party noise from next door didn't permeate that last bit of the talk. So I'm getting some questions here. And one is, I might just pop this up here so I can see it better and you're not seeing the top of my head. So one of the questions is, how can we support our trans young people that come out to us as a parent or at work? Well, firstly, I think it's a great privilege when somebody comes out to you, and you really need to be very humbled by that. That shows an enormous amount of trust and vulnerability from that person. I think the first thing, more than anything else, is just to listen to them in that moment. Don't try and offer any solutions for them, and see how they want to go about maybe next steps for them. It might not be safe for them to come out to their family. You might be the person that they've trusted. It's good to reach out to other organisations like Transcend or Transgender Victoria or any of the great organisations around Australia to help you support that person. But just be mindful that not everybody is in a safe place to be out in every aspect of their lives, and that transition looks different for everybody. So I think it's a very personal process of becoming that just needs us to be there for them, but not try and direct it in any way, but help them find the best information and support around them, and be just a really honest, open and trustworthy pair of ears. What are some tips? So there are a couple there who have, what can we do if we accidentally say the wrong thing or misgender someone? Look, that's going to happen from time to time, and I don't think that trans and gender diverse or non-binary people expect perfection. I think what they would like for you to do is just say sorry, correct yourself and move on, and not make it all about you. I think we get flustered in that moment and want to go, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so stupid, and then that person has to end up kind of comforting you and making you feel better. Try not to do that. Just apologise, correct yourself and move on. I think that's the best way to go about it. Have we got any other questions there? Let me see. Jessa, I'm not really seeing the questions coming up on my side of things, so I might need you to feed me some more. Blip, 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 blue. Where have I gone? Have you got any more questions for me? Let me see. Oh, thank you. That's it. They're all the questions. All right. Well, I think then if that's all there is, maybe we'll sign off for the evening. Cool. It feels so very strange talking to people but not talking to people. It feels really awkward. But look, I hope you got something out of my talk, and I hope you'll buy my book if you haven't already. And if you want to know more about the work of Transcend, there should be a link in the comments there for you to follow. We operate through the generous donations of people like you, and if you would like to make a donation to us, we would be really grateful for that. So there's a link to donate as well below. So thank you all so very much for joining me. I hope you have a great weekend, a safe weekend. Look after each other, be kind to one another, and I'll talk to you again another time. Thank you. Bye.